Hello and welcome to RuggaMatrix International, episode 212. What's next? Mark Cashman and Ben Kimber, thanks for coming in. Post-World Cup, Cash Cow, what is next?
Well, Bronk, on the way over, you remember I said last week I warmed up with a Sir David Attenborough
Here we go.
nature video. Well, tonight in the car on the way over, Smooth FM. Jeez, it was good. The only thing missing was love song dedications.
I thought we were going to get another St. Helens plugged in. That's right.
Gee, unbelievable. Ben Kimber, how are you? Let's move straight on to that.
Very good, mate. Moved past the World Cup, starting to look ahead. Bit of news around on a couple of different fronts. Very keen to talk about what's next.
Yeah, there's lots happening. Of course, rugby resumes in the Northern Hemisphere, and RuggaMatrix isn't going to stop. In fact, RuggaMatrix is just building up to be bigger and better than ever before, so stand by for the big news next year. So, gentlemen, the big news is what's next for England, really, and who is going to coach England. We've seen some names thrown around, Cash Cow. Who's ruled themselves out of coaching England after, as we said last week, Stuart Lancaster was still in the job. He's no longer in the job. Who's going to coach England?
Shocked.
It's an interesting scenario, boys, isn't it? And feel free to chip in when the moment arises. But obviously, Michael Cheika ruled himself out. Jake White ruled himself out. But Jake obviously puts his hand up for just about every job that's going that earns money. So and of course Eddie, he said at the Stormers induction interview that he wasn't interested. So obviously there's a bit of machinations going on behind the scenes. But the question I want to ask is, why are all these people stepping away from the position? Is it a poison chalice to coach England?
Well, and was even Michael Cheika a serious consideration, Ben?
I think you'd have to go on a bit of a goose hunt there, mate. There's absolutely no way. I mean,
No.
I don't know whether someone's kicked it around trying to get a bit of noise about the role and get different interest, but
Well, I certainly got that.
Incumbent Wallaby coach after 12 months who bleeds the Wallabies colours, there is absolutely no way in the world, and he's come out and said that. So either someone's up to a bit of mischief on the other side and said, wouldn't it be great, and it's turned into a story, or some journo's just actually pulled the wrong rein and come across as a goose.
I just get the feeling the journalist pulled the wrong rein, because if you look at Michael's coaching contracts, he does tend to actually honour them all the way through. So it would be a change in behaviour him to actually take up that position.
I would have liked to have seen Eddie take over the job, and I actually don't say that he's out of the question yet, because Eddie can pull a backflip. We know that, given coaching dramas in the past. However, personally, I just like to see him take the challenge on. I think if anyone can do it, I think you need an outsider like Eddie who can come and shake the joint up to do the job.
They definitely sound like they need the Eddie Jones stink eye in there some way, don't they? I mean, having
Having faced it, yes.
and yeah, I definitely agree with you, Duro, that if Eddie Jones has stood up in front of the Stormers and said, I'm not interested, I'd say let's have a little bit of a block of salt with that, not a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because the money has come for the Beaver Express with he's roared into favouritism with the bookies, and there's usually a reason for that.
What do England need?
Well, they obviously need someone to shake the joint up, don't they? They need someone to come in from outside. They need to refine their selection sort of processes, because what is it? It's the biggest body of rugby playing numbers in the actual world, and they can't even get out of their pool at the most recent World Cup. So they really do need to shake the tree and find out what's about. Listen, there's tremendously talented sort of people there, but obviously the Lancaster way of doing things, I don't think was ever going to work, really.
And a lot's happened since we spoke last. I mean, Sam Burgess came back to Australia and he's ready to play for Souths again in rugby league next year. But gee, there's been some drama behind the scenes. Your word about the kit guy, the kit man, and the investments. All sorts of drama about unrest and people dumping on the team. Didn't sound like a happy camp.
Certainly not a happy camp by the sound of things. I think Sam was a little bit shocked about the venom that some of the former players threw at him. So not a really good scenario for him to start his international career. And let's be honest, he was picked too soon and in the wrong position.
How many embarrassing losing squads are happy camps though? I mean, really. They got to a point where they were not just beaten, but they went out in their home tournament in the pool stages And I don't think it's that surprising that it started to fall apart. Everyone knew the coach was going to get shot, and I think kudos to Lancaster for the way that he bowed out. England Rugby were again stuffing around. It was quite clear that they weren't going to continue with him in the role. The review was going on, and he pulled himself out of the race and stepped away. And I think that deserves some kudos. He definitely is a man who had a lot of integrity, but couldn't get the right result from the players, and things started to spin out of control.
Yeah, but if you look back at the results in the pool, they weren't trounced to get them dumped out of the World Cup, were they? They weren't. So, different story for the Wales game, for example. I mean, it was on a nice edge, and if England had beaten Wales in that situation, we could be looking at a different World Cup. And what do you say about the camp then?
But that's rugby, right? I mean, everyone's talking about what an amazing All Blacks team they are because they won.
I have seen camps that are not happy camps and still win.
True. But in this case, you're dead right on the results. New Zealand in the semi, a couple of points away from being done by South Africa.
Yeah.
Very different story if that happens for them. But they managed to get through and move on with it. England, the bar was super high for England at a home World Cup. They didn't clear it, and then out it comes.
So just digging a little deeper, the harmony went missing for England. They should have been building this team on home turf, the whole support of the nation behind them for some time. Did the Sam Burgess thing throw the spanner in the works?
I get the feeling that it actually did because. And then the other thing that I think brought down England was. But
he was so tempting. Like if you see that athlete, you want to pick him.
Well, pick him in the right position. I always think that his coach at Bath, Mike Ford, had the right idea. He was making him into a number 6 who could range wide, a bit like Kieran Reid from the All Blacks, and I suppose a bit like Michael Hooper in those outside channels, doing the odd pilfer, doing some really good defensive work, and also carting the ball up. But the problem with England is they don't really know what style of play that they actually want to put on the paddock. The Wallabies have decided the way they want to do it. The All Blacks have got 2 or 3 versions of the way they can play the game. That's why they're the best team in the world.
What did you think, Ben? I mean, I was actually disappointed, and I know a lot of people sort of said, well, what are you talking about? That England bailed out before the end or at the pool stage, because I wanted to see them keep going, because it just would have added an extra dimension to the playoffs. But what do you think about the health of the game if England sort of peter along and don't perform again?
The England are one of those teams that they've got an amazing depth, and it really is a sad indictment on the way that team was managed that they didn't make it through. That said, it was a very tough pool environment. We're talking about a very unusual pool of death with 3 teams who were in the top echelons of the game, and one had to go. Whichever one went was going to get a lot of focus and a lot of noise around them. I think they'll come back. They've got a lot of good players. I just go to something you said before, Casho, and you were talking about your fact that they need someone from outside. I don't know if looking at the way that Checker spoke when he clearly said no way in the world would I take that job. But it was very clear in the way he approached talking about it that he was reinforcing what he's trying to do with Australian rugby. He said they've got a lot of good coaches in England. This is a time for them to start to bring their own talent through and see what they've got. There's guys who could step up. And what he's doing there is he's really reinforcing what he's built in Australian rugby with the culture he's built, saying everyone is part of this team, every coach, and he wants to make sure he works with the super coaches across the board. Anyone who's on the bench is a finisher. Anyone who's in the squad is just as important as someone who starts the game. And culture is something that is hugely important, but where Checker's got it right is he's married that with smart rugby, picking largely the right players, playing smart games. Lancaster, by all accounts, had a great approach to culture, and I think you touched on it there, Bronk, that particularly the choice of Burgess and the way he was managed showed that he didn't really have the right approach to putting a team together.
What England do need to do, though, is to actually have an experienced international coach in there for at least the next 2 or 3 years. Nominate a guy who's going to come through and actually take over the job, preferably someone from England. I don't know who that is. It might be Mike Ford from Bath. Who knows? But actually put him through the ropes of actually of the international scene, bring him through, get him tippy top and ready to go, and then hand the keys to the car to him.
Do you think England have been searching for that Johnny Wilkinson type manna from heaven?
the player that you really build a team around.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't really have that standout player, and I think we spoke in our World Cup wrap up about Dan Carter and Bernard Foley and the like. And one thing I think I wanted to say last week and didn't get to was that if you're going to have one world-class player or two, as we've got, I'd love to have it at number 10, as New Zealand did. The Johnny Wilkinson type player who can control a game, kick the goals, and really direct a team around the park. Absolutely, they need that. But so does every team that wants to be in the top 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think the good thing is that international rugby in a way continues this week with the Barbarians in action and Cash Cow. We're looking at the team in front of us, and what a mix of talented players, from the fresh Scudder straight through to Victor Matfield playing, and of course Michael Checker coaching the team.
It's an interesting mix, really, isn't it? There's Stephen Moore there. There's the Aussie number 6. Please give me his name very quickly. Michael.
Stephen Hoyles.
Stephen Hoyles, and the Brumbies back rower.
Huh? What are you talking about?
Are you talking about Jared Butler?
Jared Butler. Oh yeah, number 8.
No. Anyway, let's sort of
Scott Fardy's on the bench.
Scott Fardy.
Scott
He's
Fardy.
on the bench,
That's right.
mate. Yeah.
Scott Fardy.
So he's not number 6 today.
No, but he'll.
Yeah, he'll get there.
He'll play in that position.
Well, now we know where you're going.
Yeah.
Cash Cow.
So, but
Proceed.
Yeah. Anyway, it's from what I believe it's one of the great rugby experiences. You get first class airfares to sort of fly into. The kit's always good. Good hotel rooms, and there's a nice little sling at the end of it. I believe around the 10,000 quid mark.
Yeah.
You've got to be looking forward to that Argie's game.
That's why I think Bob Dwyer loved coaching the Barbarians.
That's right. Specialist Barbars coach.
Yeah.
But you've got the game against Gloucester there, look at that lineup. Milner, Scudder, Joe Tamani, Namani Nadolo, got a touch of the Cashos there. Pat Lambie, big Victor Matfield, De Jager, Hoyles, he gets a Guernsey. I think it's going to be great. I think the Gloucester game will be really good to watch, but that Argie's game is going to be great.
Yeah, no, it's terrific stuff, isn't it? And it's good to see the Barbarians' spirit still alive. And, Checker having a go at it as well. And I think the thing about Michael Checker is you touched about it, and this is a good lesson, I think, for any head coach, even in England, about getting, it's a difficult situation with the clubs over there, obviously, but in Australia, getting the provinces on board and getting Stephen Larkham in. Stephen is quite a character, and how can I place this and put this Cash Cow? Stephen's not everyone's cup of tea. So Stephen is a genius, but he's the genius that forgets his boots before the game, that sort of stuff. And I know many times we've had to send the bagman back to the hotel to pick up his boots. But the way that he came into the fold and worked with Checker and Nathan Gray was just astounding.
Is he a similar, Bron, having been there alongside the Wallabies teams that Larkham was a part of? You also referred to, I think, Pocock as saying, he's a very different character. Nowhere near like Larkham, but those blokes who are slightly apart from the team in the way they might be or the way they might conduct themselves. Is that a similar sort of situation?
Yeah, I think so, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. Australia brought together these different characters. And go back to the Super Rugby game where the Waratahs played against the Brumbies, and everyone thought, there's no way he could play with this team down the track. Well, guess what? That was all forgotten. And Pocock, through his sheer good blokiness, if I could put it that way.
You're making up words, I like it.
Good blokiness, was able to push through it, and who could deny it? And the fact that he's a great player is one thing, but he's the Sir David Attenborough of the team, isn't he, Cash Cow?
Well, actually, Check is coaching against another character of the game, Laurie Fisher at Gloucester during the midweek game. So he's one of the guys that actually set up a lot of the things that the Brumbies did so well in recent times.
He's no doubt Australia's best forward coach. I don't know what you think, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was great to see him stay around in coaching in Australian rugby for a while there after he missed out on the Brumbies head coach role, but very well respected by the players and definitely always put particularly a forward pack out there that would perform. And
I think it was a bit disappointing that we saw him leave at a time in Australian rugby when we thought maybe he'd come in and be involved with Ewan McKenzie, and then the whole thing sort of fell apart. And and he'll be hooking up at the opposite side of the field with Checker this week, and I think maybe the door's now open for a lot of our coaches to come back, and Checker's such a such a character, a knockabout sort of bloke, that it's really hard not to like him if you're good at your field. You know what I mean? Like, if
Doesn't suffer fools.
Yeah. So if you're a coach, he obviously respect someone like Laurie Fisher, for example, and many other coaches in Australia, like Les Kiss, who's obviously making his way in Ireland so well. And I think that's that sort of character that has attracted so much of a response out of the Australian players and the coaching staff. There's no question that Australia had to perform well. I think it always starts at the top, the front office, and he was able to shake up the ARU at the same time. He banged on some doors there and said, I want this to happen. And through his sheer will and forceful nature, backed up by results, don't forget, because his performances for Leinster were just amazing, backed up by results. And, of course, Randwick, don't forget as well. He has that character that sort of swept everyone along for the ride. And I think if you're good enough to do that, you're going to finish on top at some point.
One of the things with Czech is he is respected almost universally now, and I think he has the All Blacks and Steve Hansen. I'm not saying on the back foot, but they are wary of.
No, they should be looking over their shoulder.
They are actually looking over their shoulder and saying, "What's he going to come up with next?" Whether it's a witty line in a press conference or whether it's one of those great moves that involves that man Bernard Foley and Kurtley Beale. So it's an interesting scenario. Looking forward to the Bledisloe Cup, and also this year coming up in Australia, 3 tests against England. What a great series that would be if the old Beavertron's in charge of England. Fun and games.
Just on Checker there. It's probably, we've talked about this briefly in previous podcasts, but probably really worth comparing him as that style of coach versus a Rod McQueen, because the reason that he's been, one of the reasons he's been so successful, one of the reasons he's not just having an impact on the field but off the field, is because you can tell he absolutely lives and breathes it. When he's coaching that team,
he doesn't need the job to make a living.
No, he wants to be there because he absolutely gives a shit, and he's on the sideline wishing he was out there booting some heads with them. And I think that passion transfers to the squad. He feels a part of that squad. He gets on the side of the scrum at training, for God's sake, as opposed to that sort of. I think Ewan McKenzie was probably slightly more towards that Rod McQueen mould of wanting to be that. What was the title he gave himself up in Queensland? High Grand Poobah or something, But sitting back and just saying, I'm going to pull some strings, not I'm in there with you boys.
Yeah, he wanted to do that early on at the Waratahs as well, and be like a CEO of the football team. And it doesn't. I just don't think it works. You've got to be hands-on more as the head coach, and that's what Checker does. And even Eddie Jones, he loved getting in there and yelling and yapping away on the field. So,
mate, I'd love to see Eddie Jones back in the international rugby arena that we.
We got a great taste for it of it, didn't we, at the World Cup?
Mate. Just be on again.
And all our Kiwi mates were bagging Eddie when he said he was going to take on South Africa and take on their scrum. And guess what? They did it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Super Rugby. And your favourite team, the new Japanese team, is it going to be ready, Cash Cow?
Well,
have they got any players?
Did you pass on my suggestion of a manga type logo?
The Sunwolves.
The Sunwolves is the actual name for the franchise. They are in the formative sort of stages. I think what Eddie and the national team did for them at the World Cup was give them a bit of breathing space to actually operate in, because questions were being asked at the Sanzar level, at World Rugby level, whether they were going to be ready. But I think they'll get there. I could imagine their team coming together in the weeks leading up to the season start. So not too many of the Japanese players who actually play in that Japanese top 10 league are actually being involved, but they're working away hard. I think they're on the verge of actually appointing a CEO, which is a good start, and we'll see where things go from there.
Is Peter Hewitt involved at all? He's over in Japan, isn't he?
Oh, he's probably got some.
He'd have to have a
Good
a
in for old
finger
boy.
in there somewhere. Yeah.
Good in for old boy. He'd have to be involved.
He's involved.
It's only a reward if you're not in it.
with Suntory, yeah.
I'm a little bit worried about the size of the competition. You know, I really want to
Agreed.
see how this is going to play out. But Super 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm just worried it might get a little bit too much and it might start to spin a bit. You'd start to lose that great competition in week in and week out, and you might get some people who are getting towed up every week.
What they've got to get out there early on is because there's 3 or 4, I don't know, 5 franchises or conferences. So what they've got to get out there is how the thing freaking well works. It's hard enough having 3 conferences in the 3 Sanzar nations. What's going to go on with Japan and Argentina? Conversely, Argentina, I think they're going to be ready to go. I think they'll win, and they'll win often, and contend for a finals berth.
Are they're going to rack up more travel than anyone else? Is that going to be pretty clear?
Oh yeah, I think so. But a lot of these guys have been on the road. They've actually been playing for the Argentine second team, their development team, which has been playing in some competitions in South Africa. So they're used to being based overseas, and I think as we saw some of those guys coming through at the World Cup, they're good players, and they've got a good style of football to work with.
Different markets look at it differently, but the thing, and Ben, you'd be aware of this, is that in the Australian market, the frustrating thing is that you'd get all these amalgamations of provinces, and they don't really represent the city. Like we want to know we're playing against Wellington. We don't want to play against Auckland. We want to play against Tokyo. So there's some identity, and I think for the Australian market, it's been hard over the years to build a rivalry, and that you'd have in the local competition. If you had say a 10-team competition, I want a 10-team competition that plays each other twice. That you build these idea. You know who you're playing against. You know the players.
Yeah.
So you buy in. You're not just watching the Waratahs play this random team. You know what I mean?
I definitely agree. You want to feel like you're not playing a franchise. You're playing a city, and you want to see those rivalries. You see in all sports, and the Waratahs did this. They took a couple of their big games, Crusaders, etc., out to Stadium Australia because they knew that there were certain games that had that rivalry and had that expectation as well as the fan bases. And I think the more that you can build those franchises up around cities and then get some history behind them, the better you're going to go. So this is going to be a little bit of a struggle for a few years, I would think.
We have touched on this earlier about the importance of the Pacific Island nations to world rugby, and listen, hats off to the Chiefs. They're going to actually take a competition game to Fiji next year, which is great news. I think it's a game against Crusaders.
They put that down on tax as a recruitment drive, do they?
I think they must.
Yeah, for the All Blacks. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, but did you answer my question? Are they going to have a team?
As I said to Dirk here, they will have a team, and it will come together in the weeks and days leading up to the first round.
Oh, good luck if you do.
What he's saying is they'll run out on the field. I think is what he's saying. That's all you're committing to, isn't it, Casho?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Peter, you ought to make a comeback
That's
for the Sun.
right.
Good luck in doing the media guide then.
Should be fun.
Yeah, lucky it's mostly digital these days, so you can download it as they run onto the field. There's number 1 through to 15. So some other important stuff happened from an Australian point of view. The Australian Sevens team has qualified for Rio.
Yeah. Cameron Clark, numerous other guys there. Jesse Paraha, Michael Wells.
Cameron Clark, the really talented son of Greg Clark, and Greg could only hope to have half his talent.
That's right. He's been a mainstay there since he left school. So good luck to all those guys. Several other the guys are actually moving on. As I mentioned, Jesse Paraha and Michael Wells have picked up Super Rugby gigs around the place, which is always sort of good to hear. But listen, they beat Tonga in the final qualifying game to get through 50-0. So they'll medal contend along with the women. One of the things they've got to work out is who's actually going to coach the team, because Tim Walsh, the women's coach, actually took care of them leading up to this sort of tournament. So there's some decisions to be made about whether they appoint a new coach or whether Walshy sort of takes over, because Garrett John had to go home for personal reasons, family reasons.
Yeah. He's a pretty good coach, Walshy. He's done a great job with the women's team, and of course the team well led by Ed Jenkins, who's got the squarest jaw and physique in world rugby. You cannot
right.
disagree with that, can you?
What do you think about running into the Olympics and the superstars coming in? I mean, how much do we expect that to have an impact? How many guys do you think are going to put their hands up to genuinely play? And if you're New Zealand, who's got a team which is kept together for some time and has a lot of rhythm and a lot of expertise of being number one at sevens in the world, how much do you disrupt that by trying to bring in a couple of these other blokes?
It's a totally different game. If you're going to do that, I think you've got to have these guys for the entire 2016. There's got to be several leading tournaments. It's a different sort of fitness level, different sort of fitness. You're probably not carrying as much bulk around the place as you would in the 15. So yeah, listen, on the face of it, having superstars like Commonwealth Games, I think was Lottie Takiri played in the Commonwealth Games sevens in 2006. Great idea, but was Lottie ready for sevens? Probably was. Will Sonny Bill be ready for sevens? Who knows?
Who's putting their hand up for the Wallabies for Australia? So got Quade Cooper, clearly he's trying to keep his options open there to get to the Olympics. Izzy Folau's been mentioned. I don't know how serious that is. Bernard Foley, I think, might have even talked about it.
Yeah, well, Bernard came from that sevens background before he got a Super Rugby gig. So it's obviously one of those case by case basis about whether they stick around.
You have to handle it carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, because the sevens guys have been there, sweating blood for the team for a long time. Two quick things. We've got about 3.5 minutes to go, and I want to deal with two things. Matt Tamua and of course, the issue out of the World Cup, which was Israel Folau, and was he fit enough? Firstly, Matt Tamua leaving Australian rugby to play with Leicester. You guys surprised?
Oh, at first I was really shocked, and then I remembered that he's got his girlfriend / fiancée is Elise Perry, who plays both soccer and cricket, I think, for Australia.
Yes.
And I thought that there had to be some connection there. There had to be some way that they both thought we'll go and give it a crack, because he was never going to be leaving her behind. I think it's a massive move for him in Wallabies terms. Matt Giddo, clearly came back in there in the 12, but Tamua, I think, has a lot to offer and could have done a great job in the starting lineup.
Yep. As you know, I picked him at my 12 all the way through the World Cup, so that's the situation for Australia. But Australia going to miss him, but he has to do what he has to do for family, and good on him. He's a terrific fella too.
In terms of his development, he'll be working with Aaron Major, who's the one of the coaches there at Leicester.
Yep.
I think he'll learn
the
a
All Blacks
lot.
greats,
I think he'll learn a lot from that situation.
I don't know why more guys don't do it, to be honest. Prime of your life, big bucks, go and play overseas in a different country for a while. I just like to see him back when these blokes go.
Yeah. Don't shut the door. In fact, we know the selection policy now. There's capability of picking guys. 2 minutes to go. Israel Folau, we were disappointed in his World Cup, and we absolutely know why. He was playing with a shocking ankle. So you weren't surprised, Casho?
No, certainly not. Did it in the first England game, I believe. So
should he have been picked after that?
Well, I think he was. They attempted to manage him through that situation. Ankles.
Mistake. I'm going to say it was a mistake.
Ankles are one of the trickiest injuries, and you'd know this from being close to a team. Sometimes they take 5 minutes to get right. Other times they take 2 seasons to get right. This is obviously something that probably needed surgery straight away, but he wasn't doing any further damage, so why not see how he went?
Jerome, I'm with you. Hindsight's a wonderful thing for us, of course, but you read it now and you say mistake. This Wallabies team leading up to the World Cup relied a lot on Izzy Folau's game-breaking ability, the ability to get across the line, bring the ball back, get them on the front foot. They did so well to get through without him firing, but when they come up against the All Blacks, geez, you would have liked a bit more of that from the back, and they didn't really have any other option there. They didn't have another setup with maybe Kurtley Bill getting a bit more time, so yeah, it looked like a mistake. Yeah,
it certainly explained why he didn't have a great World Cup, but when fully fit, hey, is there anyone better?
I mean, is that an example of, coaches just getting that little, Cheika particularly, that lean towards loyalty that he has over maybe a bit more of the reality of the situation?
Well, he did have a good option. Kurtley Beale off the bench had probably did everything that was asked of him. So Interesting decision, but I think we all agree it was a mistake to play him all the way through the World Cup with injury.
At the end of the day, and Kirtley was superb when he did start, wasn't he?
Absolutely. All right, so Mark Cashman, thanks for coming in, mate. Good to see you again.
Bronk.
And we'll be going through the rest of the year. And Ben Kimber, great to see you again too, mate.
Absolutely, mate. Always a pleasure.
All right, Ben Kimber and Mark Cashman joining us for episode 212 of RuggaMatrix International. We'll see you again next week.